rehearsal is over. Now it's showtime.
Hi, I'm Torte Lini. Finally, Ringmaster has arrived, and with him is the compendium for the International 2024 in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's been practically 10 months since the developers announced a new hero, only to have him come out just before the start of the next International. So we have definitely been patient waiting for his release, and with his arrival comes a slew of abilities and uniqueness that we haven't seen before. And yet, he doesn't seem quite complete yet. For starters, he doesn't really have a functional facet. He basically has one, and it says that he doesn't have a facet yet, doesn't do anything yet. Secondly, he also doesn't have an Ag Scepter at all, which is pretty standard for newly released heroes, but no facet, let alone no two choices of a facet, is pretty surprising. However, he does have a Souvenir slot, which I think is quite interesting. You can see some of the items down there, and we'll talk about that in a second. And we'll take a closer look at the hero, talk about maybe some items and combos that really works with him, and some synergies on heroes that you guys might particularly want to know about. So subscribe, stay tuned for a full step-by-step hero tutorial on how to play Ringmaster. So this Ringmaster, or otherwise known as Cogliostro Kettle, hope I read that right, is an intelligence-based hero with actually some backstory that Valve has released in this cool comic called The Puppet. The gist of it is that of a man named Osbert, who loved the theater and sought for fame, traveled from town to town, putting on shows with his clockwork marionetto, and would do tricks and performances like how this marionette would catch throwing knives, etc. Or so Osbert thought, as his last performance didn't quite work with the silent automaton partner. And basically, an old lady comes to town to offer a fix for the dysfunctional marionette. She offers to bring him to life for 500 gold, but Osbert thinks it's a scam and tosses her ass. Well, like most old women in these fantastical scenarios, like, I don't know, Beauty and the Beast, these old ladies don't really appreciate being literally thrown in the mud or thrown back into the dark forest. So she does bring back the marionette back to life, hoping to set him free, but in his freedom to live and choose, he determines that death is the best expression of freedom, and he kills the old lady and Osbert soon after in a unique show that probably could not be replicated again. It's a nice little story to give some color to the hero. I think it's fairly well done, albeit short and a bit predictable. So about Ringmaster, in summary, on his stats, he's an intelligence-based hero, which we can see here evidently, with the 5th highest based intelligence to start out with, similar to, let's say, Shadow Shaman, for example. But Ringmaster's strength is also one of the highest. In fact, I think it's one of the best strength scaling and starting strength for intelligence-based heroes. And his attack damage is actually fairly solid, 48 to 58. It's not the highest, but it's definitely in the upper echelons for most intelligence heroes. Not to mention, he also has an attack range of 575, which is equal to that of, like, let's say, Viper or Hoodwink. And it's a little bit below the average of your typical ranged heroes of, let's say, 600. Ringmaster is a decent support or offlaner, though we'll see how the meta treats him overall. Personally, based on his abilities, he seems to be playing fairly from the back, and more importantly, out of danger. The developers seem to agree with me. They have classed him as a disabler and support in their summary page, not to mention one escape as well, which we'll talk about in a second, which leads us to believe that this hero is pretty much aimed to be a good crowd control based hero, and we can see why when we look at his abilities, both range from assisting allies to disabling enemies and ultimately punishing them. One thing we'll notice with this hero is that he has very good range on all his abilities, really displaying how he plays from afar pretty easily compared to most other heroes. I would equate him to, let's say, an Ancient Apparition in terms of actual range of his 2 abilities, and then having 2 other abilities fairly close, putting him in respective danger. So let's break down his abilities. For starters, Ringmaster's innate ability is really unique. It's called Dark Carnival Barker, and the gist of it is that anytime Ringmaster is near a kill, whether by him or an ally, he gets a souvenir, and they even dedicated a souvenir slot in his HUD. These souvenirs are usable items that Ringmaster can apply to himself, or sometimes allies, like the Funhouse Mirror, which creates an illusion of himself, or the Strongman Tonic, which increases an ally's strength, or the Whoopee Cushion, which pushes Ringmaster forward and leaves behind a smelly AoE that slows. So you can effectively see that there is a reward for Ringmaster to be kind of a proactive support here, like a Pause 4. and that really pushes him to go for ganks in hopes that he can get more of these cool or unique souvenirs. Cool ability, but I would honestly say that the innate ability takes a backseat to his 4 main abilities: Tame the Beast, Escape Back, Impalement Arts, Wheel of Wonder. And we can break these abilities down by their leading value. Now, Tame the Beast is his nuking ability. Essentially, you channel it, and the longer you channel the ability, the smaller the radius, but the larger the damage and the fear debuff that comes with it. So casting it early means you have a bit more range since the radius is farther, but you get less value out of it, and casting it for longer means you hit less enemies, but you deal more damage and the fear lasts longer. It costs a decent chunk of mana despite having only a 10-second cooldown. Now, Escape Act is his, as you guessed, escape ability. It works similar to Astral Imprisonment, but with movement, where you can literally save an ally from being targeted or killed and watch them flee as they gain additional magic resistance, 100% slow resistance, and they cannot be targeted by enemies or allies. So a common combo you'd probably see is something like Leshrac with Diabolic Edict and Pulse Nova being put in a box to output his damage, especially with Bloodstone activated. Heads up though, the Escape Act does interrupt channeling abilities, so you definitely can't cast it on Witch Doctor to protect him during his Death Ward. Impalement Arts is his late game damage dealer in that it deals scaling percentage based health damage. At max level you get 4 stacks and it has a really long range, so after using your Tame the Beast AoE slow or Escape Act to save an ally, you can stay from afar and cast these daggers that minorly slow, but more importantly, punish tanky enemies with its 5% max health as damage per second. These daggers don't stack, so if you throw one out, throwing another one will just refresh the duration and nothing else. Real quick, before we talk about his ultimate ability, we should talk real quick about his situational Ag Shard ability called Spotlight. It's basically where he shines a large light in an area that reveals both invisible units, sentry wards excluded, and can cause enemies to miss 30% for 8 seconds. Oh, it also burns illusions 50% of their maximum health, so you can see how the Ag Shard might actually be some nice additional tools for Ringmaster to help against heroes like Ricky and Bounty Hunter in terms of their invisibility, as well as Terrorblade, Phantom Lancer, and Naga Siren. What's more is that late game it causes heroes to miss 30% of their attack, and that can be pretty massive since it lasts such a long time and the AoE is fairly respectable. Lastly, his ultimate ability, Wheel of Wonder, seems very strong. It has a massive range, so there's very little risk for you to cast it, and it punishes enemies who face it, similar to Medusa's ultimate, where if enemies stare at the Wheel of Wonder for 0.5 seconds, they are taunted towards it and trigger an explosion while taking periodic damage. But if no one is looking at it, then the Wheel of Wonder will still deal massive AoE periodic damage and just explode later, after 8 seconds instead, so it's win-win regardless. So in terms of heroes that really don't want to deal with this Wheel of Wonder, heroes like Troll Warlord or Lifestealer, who kind of just want to stay on their target, don't want to be taunted towards a wheel that will ultimately destroy them, but more importantly will make them waste their key abilities like Battle Trance. So in terms of skill build, what you'd probably see is something like this. You'd probably max out Tame the Beast. It has the most nuke damage, so it has evidently more value in terms of approach, especially if you have an offlaner to help kind of set up your follow through with Tame the Beasts. You probably see more points in Impalement Arts over Escape Act. I'd look at maybe 1 point Escape Act either before 6 or after 6, really whenever you think you will need it. Maybe if you're playing like a pod 5 Ringmaster, you'll pop an Escape Act on your safe lane carry to save him. And his combo is fairly straightforward, right? We're thinking Wheel of Wonder into Impalement Arts and then finish with Tame the Beast. Or if you just want to do damage, you can just do Wheel of Wonder into Tame the Beast if the distance isn't too brutal. Ultimately, this hero kind of plays around other heroes, so even if you don't really get a true combo off, there is a lot of synergy with you and a lot of heroes that we talked about previously in this section of the video. So his talents are actually pretty incredible in terms of scaling, because I would see Ringmaster more as an early to mid game, and obviously the talents are trying to alleviate that to give him a bit more power into the late game. His level 15 talent has 2 choices, both are fantastic. Gives him a debuff immunity while channeling Tame the Beasts, which I think is always lovely. The channeling time is a little long, not that long, but still something to be concerned about. And then alternatively, what you can also opt for, and probably what I would recommend, is Impalement Arts, and it penetrates 1 more target. There's missing the word more, but I think you can infer that if you can impale already 1, then another target means 1 more. So essentially, you pick the level 20 talent that kind of connects with it, plus 1 second Impalement Arts bleed and slow duration. The slow is actually pretty lackluster. It's 0.8 seconds, so not the longest, but a nice little touch. Now it's going to be almost doubled, or if not more, doubled technically, from 0.8 to 1.8 seconds, which is lovely. And then what really matters here is that at level 20, 5% max health damage per second on a 4-second duration is now going to be 5 seconds. So definitely that's a massive exponential increase, and really justified when you're hitting that kind of late game where you want to kind of stay in the back hidden. You want to throw out daggers as much as you can. And then the level 25 talent, the plus 100 wheel radius and range, I honestly think that's kind of forgettable. It really does 1400 range, and it does a pretty good AoE of 600. I think you either nail it or you don't. The alternative, which I think is what really matters, escape act grants strong, dispel, and flying. That's pretty incredible, especially on a decent cooldown of 20 seconds. It basically really screws with enemy teams who are trying to target a specific hero. You can immediately disjoint that, pull them back off through a cliff, or if they're siege up high ground, get them through some walled areas. That's definitely the ideal, I think, 25 talent. So in terms of items, a hero, like most supports, honestly doesn't really need that much. We mentioned the situational late game items of like an ag shard, especially against, you know, ultra late right clickers like Slark or Juggernaut. But I think what we may see for the hero in the coming meta is items that help with reach and positioning. While two of his abilities have some really long reach, right? Will of Wonder has a pretty good long reach, and so does evidently his Impalement Art. I think his two other abilities does put him in kind of a perilous position of concern, specifically Escaped Act having the shortest range, and then Tame the Beast having an okay range, all things considered. Escaped Act, I would say, is probably your most focused or most important ability because it has such a good way of kind of getting key heroes out from under danger. So items I probably would see a lot of, maybe Aether Lens and Force Staff. Aether Lens to improve your Tame the Beast from a really good range, as well as Escape Act having a really more respectable range if you're not casting it on yourself. I also really like Glimmer Cape. You can basically double up on Escaped Act and Glimmer Cape together. So Glimmer Cape only is 5 seconds, and then Escaped Act lasts a little bit shorter. So what you would basically do is use the extra movement speed from Escaped Act while the long duration of Glimmer Cape to basically get out from someone under, and then have a little extra time to escape or juke them out. Really nice, cool move there. Since you're picking up Arcane Boots anyway, since you have pretty decently low cooldown abilities, you probably go and upgrading to Guarding Greaves just for the dispel, just for a little more survivability, just because you're in the fight for a pretty long time, assuming nobody targets you. Those I would say are probably the main 3 to 4 core items that you would focus on for Ringmaster. Of course, as the meta develops, I'm sure there will be more that people will focus on. So hopefully that gives you a good idea about Ringmaster in his current state. Of course, I have a tentative guide already out there in game. Please rate it up, and see you guys for the next video.